China is a nation that's known for its high population, immense culture, and massive size. For years, it's been home to Laogai camps. This nation has a lengthy history. In the 1940s, its history changed. A revolutionary communist movement took power, and in 1949, the man at its head declared the nation to be the People's Republic of China. This charismatic leader, Mao Zedong, used his power to order mass executions. In this 1951 telegraph on display at Laogai Museum, Mao made this proclamation regarding the concern that the city of Shanghai could see an uprising.
In a city as big as Shanghai, I'm afraid the problem can only be settled by executing a couple thousand counter-revolutionaries within a year. This is very necessary.
In the late 1950s and early 60s, the communist policy to bring China up to speed with industry throughout the world, called the Great Leap Forward, cost 30 to 45 million lives. Mao and his party's Cultural Revolution to enforce communism in China during the 1960s and 70s resulted in the arrest of untold millions and tens of thousands of executions. One of those killed was Zhang Zhuxing, a woman who was accused of speaking out against the Cultural Revolution. She was sent to an all-male prison. Male inmates were told to rape her to reduce their sentences. Zhang's husband and children were not allowed to visit after her arrest. Without a trial, she was executed. To prevent her from crying out during her execution, police slit her throat and inserted a metal pipe. These policies led to a number of people resorting to cannibalism to survive. In one case, back in 1960, this Chinese man killed and ate his son due to starvation. Soon after it took power, the Chinese Communist Party started a prison system with inspiration from a then ally. It was called Laogai, translating to labor and reform. Those who disagreed with the movement were to be worked until they became socialists.
Since 1949, the Chinese Communist Party ruling the country. And the next year, Stalin arranged the Soviet Gulag expert came to China and helped the Chinese set up the labor camps.
Like the German Nazi Party that separated the Jewish population and sent them to camps, the Chinese were separated into different classes. They included the landlord class or the capitalist class. And like the system in Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union and his Soviet gulags, they were to be abolished or eliminated. It was a socialist revolution similar to that of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia during the 1970s, under the leadership of dictator Pol Pot, who, with ideas sent by Mao and the Communist Party, divided Cambodia's population, set up labor camps, and executed masses. The name commonly used for this was the Cambodian killing fields. In China's Laogai system, prisoners have been forced to produce goods for international distribution as part of their, quote, reform. This is not a thing of the past. Laogai Research Foundation has verified that close to 1,000 of these camps exist today. Prisoners have been forced to live in horrific conditions and been tortured. Former prisoners recount having to wear this dog hat on display at Laogai Museum. They were handcuffed and tortured while wearing it, left with a hole to breathe and so that their screams could be heard while they're punished. Prisoners were asked 3 questions. Who are you? What is this place and why are you here? They're forced to respond, I'm a criminal, this is the Laogai, and I'm here to reform through labor. 45 to 50 million people have been jailed in Laogai since 1949. One of those sent was a medical student named Hu Weiwei. A friend turned over her diary. Its entries that were critical of the Chinese Communist Party landed this 24-year-old in Laogai. Another prisoner was Wei Jingsheng. He was one of the first people to openly denounce post-Mao leader Deng Xiaoping, a leader who would become a dictator. And for 19 years, a graduate of the Geology Institute in Beijing served as a prisoner in Laogai. His name, Harry Wu.
In early 1950, Soviet expert set up the labor camp in Qinghofang. And this is so-called number 1 Laogai General Brigade of Beijing. I was there.
After his release from Laogai, Wu moved to America. He returned to China with a home video camera in an effort to expose the Laogai system. During one trip in 1995, he was arrested upon entering China and again sent to Laogai. He was released, he returned to America, and shared his story using the mass media.
Once I was in the camp, I only have 72 pounds.
70?
No food. No food. I cannot stay.
No food at all?
Yeah, I try to find some rats and frogs.
Rats?
I support myself, yeah.
Wu also talked about his fight to make the word Laogai a part of everyday language.
I want to see Laogai, L-A-O-G-A-I, as a word in every language, in every dictionary, in every country.
He got his wish. In 2003, Oxford University Press added Laogai as an entry into its English dictionary. Other dictionary publishing companies followed suit. The word is to be seen as being as horrifying as words surrounding Nazi death camps or the Soviet Gulag.
Many people know about the Soviet gulags, for example. How many people know about these Chinese prison camps? So it's not to take away any of the suffering from the Soviet gulags, but it's to enlighten people as to what is going on in China and what went on in China.
The Chinese legal system is a heavily stacked deck. 99% of those the Chinese government charges with, quote, endangering state security are found guilty. It must also be noted that this charge of endangering state security replaced the old wording of being a counter-revolutionary. Prisoners are left to feel like their lives have been taken from them.
27岁进去，突然间5岁。
3 to 5 million people are currently estimated to be in the Laogai system today. It's set up like a Soviet gulag. Throughout history, the system has included the prison, Laogai Detachment, re-education through labor, detention center, forced job placement personnel or juvenile, and it also includes military. About half of those who've been sent to Laogai over the years have died.
This system, until 1980, changed Chinese policy.
While the system is alive in China, it must be noted that the word Laogai is no longer officially used to describe it. Mr. Wu was compelled to raise awareness of this inhumane treatment of the Chinese people. He spearheaded the project to create Laogai Museum.
In 2008, we set up a museum, and many people come to visit, include the Tibetan leader Dalai Lama.
Other friends of the museum have included dissident-turned-Czech President Václav Havel or actor Richard Gere.
It's astonishing to me how one person can change the world. What, in effect, Harry Wu had on the world. That he said, I'm going to talk about this. And I'm in the middle of shooting a film, and the last thing I had time to do was come down for this. Harry came to see me, and of course I said yes. And that's what he's done his whole life. He goes and he grabs people by the back of the neck and shakes them and said, this is the right thing to do. You can have an effect. And you look at him and you say, yes, you can. Look at Harry.
A member of U.S. Congress who has visited the D.C. location is New Jersey's Chris Smith. Smith and other powerful U.S. elected officials once worked to help Wu's crusade to alert consumers of Laogai products being used by major companies.
Their economy relies upon the production, the manufacture of very cheaply made goods, and when they need more workers, more people are arrested and people are then forcibly made to make these products.
We talked about freedom, we talk about it everywhere. If we say only accept if you're large and if you have cheap labor and a potential market, then all the rest goes by the by.
Apparently some American businesses value high profits more than they value fundamental human rights.
Laogai Museum features an in-depth look at the prison, such as an exhibit showing a Laogai cell, clothes worn or blankets used by prisoners. The museum also has an exhibit on the public executions that have been used by the Chinese government over the years. The idea is to, quote, kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Those executed have been paraded in the streets before being brought to their ultimate location. Great care is taken to make sure the guns used are aimed properly before these people are put to death. Executions have been followed by a process of organ harvesting detailed at the museum. Laogai Museum has a timeline of sorts covering China's landmark events from the mid-20th century on. It includes exhibits on the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests, which were followed by a massacre. We saw the unforgettable image of one man taking a stand against the massive government attack. There are varying reports of how many people were killed that June night. There may never be a way to truly find out how many civilians died in the massacre. During these protests, the famed portrait of Mao that hangs in Tiananmen Square was defaced when 3 men threw eggs filled with pigment at it. These 3 were arrested and sent to labor camp. There have been reports that they were tortured and that authorities worked to push them into mental illness. They've since been released and obtained political asylum in North America. The museum also covers China's one-child policy, or its, quote, population and family planning law. There are rampant reports of forced abortions. This cage is where residents of China have ended up for violating the policy. It's perhaps one more reason that people like Harry Wu would like to see less oppressive government in China.
I want to say China become a free and freedom country and democracy country.
Representative Ross Leighton is hoping more people become familiar with what happens in the world's most populous nation.
And there's so many people whose names we will not ever know who are suffering under this dictatorship. You cannot criticize the Chinese government. You would be sent to jail. You could not give interviews freely. You can't speak your mind. You can't practice religion freely. You can't conduct your life in a free manner.
Mr. Wu wants his museum to expand into his home country.
I wish the museum can set up in China, many cities, include Shanghai, include Beijing, include Wuhan. What is the regime want to do? They cannot arrest the people, put in the camp, just because they disagree with the government, with the Communist Party. This is a basic human rights and democracy issue.